All right, so I brought us back to this No Burden song. I'll just play it quickly just so you can remember it. Okay. So again, if we're listening to this song, so this is the chorus, and this is like, I guess, the complete song, right? We have all these different melodies, and let's just look at a frequency spectrum analyzer. Okay, so let's just look at the full frequency spectrum of this song. Again, these are all the instruments going on. We will solo them out. We'll look a little bit further at them, and then we will, I just have Nexus here, and I just want to go through a couple different sounds, and I'll show you how I would approach maybe adding a new melody in, or how we can approach it, because what you want to think about is where you can fit them into your track, which is what I say right here, okay? When selecting instruments, you got to think about fitting them in. And so if you think that way, it really helps your mixing, and it makes your track sound full by itself. And then when you go to mix the music, it really makes it a lot easier, okay? So again, here is the frequency spectrum of the full track, and then we'll solo out some sounds. Okay, so again, here is the piano. So even though it has some high frequencies, to me, this is more of like a mid kind of sound. All right. And this sound itself, I have a lot of reverb on purpose because I'm doing what's called sidechain compression, which is pumping it. Okay. So if we go here, you can see this is sidechain compression, and we have the kick drum, and I've right clicked and went sidechain to this track. On the electric piano, it allows us to see it as a sidechain trigger. So whenever the kick drum plays, it's reducing the volume of this electric piano, right? If you don't know how sidechain compression works, I highly encourage you to go look it up. So this is just getting some pumping going on, okay? But I do consider this piano kind of more of like a more of like a mid instrument. It's not very bright, even though it has the high frequencies. And again, that's where it can be deceiving. Like there are some high frequencies, and it's kind of like the kind of plucks of the sound. Okay, so now let's move to the kick drum. So again, same thing, it has the low end. And if we listen to the kick drum by itself, listen, it kind of has the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Right? You hear that. And let's just go to the kick drum, or here, let's just go A and B, and I will just cut this out, and you will hear. So like in the song, this is really what we're hearing in that kick drum. Right? So watch. Go back. This is it in the song. Here's the kick drum. Right? Like, you know, we are hearing that kick drum as the low end because that's what we know the kick drum for. But even though it has some high end, it is deceiving, but that high end is what helps the drum stand out as well. Okay? So let's look at a clap. Okay? So, you know, this looks like what a clap would be. All right. Again, this EQ, don't worry about how my cuts are. This is on the master. So this is this one right here. Okay. And again, since I'm on range 3, these are very, very subtle moves. Okay. I guess I cut some low end, like the lows. Okay. So here's the hi-hats. Right? Like we know hi-hats for being up and high frequency, but one thing to talk about hi-hats is they can live way up here. Hi-hats can also live a little bit lower as well. And here, let's just go through a couple hi-hats and I'll show you. So many hi-hats are very different. Okay. That has a very, very high frequency. That's much lower. Even though it's still playing like that same frequency, like you can hear this one is like very bright. This one's very dark. Okay. So all I'm saying is you can't be looking at the frequency spectrum and know how it's going to sound in your mix. Okay. So let's go to the bagpipe. You can hear that this one is a little bit higher up in the frequency spectrum. So I'll play it with what we got going on right now. I'll turn this one off. So you can kind of see those little peaks. That's this instrument. Okay, so it's a little bit higher frequency. So what I'm saying is we still have room up here if we wanted an instrument. It would be very, very high and bright, but you can do it. We might have to mix it more aggressively with heavy compression, but you can have a sound up here. You can also maybe have another sound in here, even with this, okay? Because this is more of like a mid instrument. You can kind of fit something in there as well. Right, like you could fit something in here. And I'm just going just by hearing, not by looking, okay? So that's something you got to kind of train for when you're making your beats. So for example, we know that the kick drum, it plays low, right? Like that's just the kick drum. We know it plays low. Here comes the bass. The bass also plays in the very similar place of your kick drum. Right? So we have our bass. Let's just listen to the bass by itself. You can hear distortion going on with that bass if I click on it. Because for a bass to cut through on like a cell phone speaker or something, we want some distortion on there. Right? Now let's put the kick drum together. But in context of the whole mix, and here's and I just have the piano we didn't listen to. Okay, so let's load everything back up. And again, one thing I want you to listen to when it goes through is, again, what I call the audio painting. This will be our next section, which is preparing the listener. So we have a reverse cymbal and a clap, and you can hear that it comes right back around, okay? So I have loaded up Nexus, and what I want to do is I just want to look at these chords. So what I'm looking for is C, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp. And you can see that this right here, this is the chord progression, okay? And I don't believe it changed. Maybe it changes at the end. But what I'll focus on is just like at the beginning, okay? So here, I will hit play. And what we want to do is just listen for this, what I call audio painting. This is, again, these are those transitions. And then what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to fit another instrument in. And what I shared with you was your bass line. Your bass line could be a lead, okay? So let's just, hopefully this one sounds okay. It sounds not bad. Sometimes these have quite a bit of effects going on. Okay, so let's say we have this bass line. No, see, that's too low. Way too low. Okay, let's get something. Sometimes a bass is really hard to find. I know there's a square. I'm just gonna use a search because I know this one's pretty powerful. Let's go bare square. Okay, you can hear how like that low end sounds good, right? We can get maybe just a little bit of this delay going on. Okay, so check this out. If I play up high, so I'm gonna go up an octave. That was a bass line, right? And so watch, if we try to play something over top of this song, again, I can't promise it's gonna sound good, but I just want you to be aware that when we are playing our sounds in our beat, it's all about trying to play throughout the octaves, try to find a sound that fits, and also be listening for where you can be placing and fitting in your sounds, because it's going to make your mixing a lot easier. So for example, if we had a piano like this, if you're always playing all your sounds here, you might want to start playing some sounds up here. Okay. So let's just hit play. It cuts through, but I think that this would kind of fight. I think this would kind of fight with the track. Let's go up higher. So here we go. We'll try it again. So that's pretty hot. So turn it down. It's loud. A little too aggressive still. It is cutting through though. You hear how it's cutting through? And it's not very loud. It's because it's in its own frequency space, and that would make its mixing so much easier. Now, it's a bit of an aggressive sound, so again, let's try a different sound, because again, I told you that bass. So this is a bass. We go up higher. So again, it's a bit loud. So let's listen. It kind of sounds a little similar to what we had, so. So that's a little cooler. Okay, so watch, we'll turn it down and we'll listen. Go up higher. Now, if you wanted to spice it up, like this is where effects would come in. And with Nexus, you also have your effects area. And if you want to add in like a chorus or whatever you want to add, many times I do add sounds in here. You can even limit or like kind of compress right away. Right, so something like that. Now the instrument itself might be long. Like, so for example, when we're playing it, you hear how like I'm going to turn this down so it doesn't hurt your ears, but if I hold it down, you can hear that the sustain is forever. And so you might be like, okay, well, this is what I might think. I'd be like, okay, let's just bring that sustain down because I'm not holding down the note. And so it's still loud. And now we're going to turn down the decay with that. There you go. Okay, so this is why it's really important to understand how all your basic things work. So this is just ADSR, okay? So attack, decay, sustain, release. Now, when you're using a Rompler like Nexus or Flex, sometimes you really don't learn this stuff like the attack. As you can see, this one has a hold. So this is really powerful. And again, I'm going to load up Serum because all of these different synths are really easy to learn and to teach off of, okay? So when we talk about ADSR, you can see attack, hold, decay, sustain. And so this is really important for you to learn. And let's just load up a different one, just so it sounds maybe just a little bit different. Okay, so again, we have, and this will be super, super quick, okay? So how it works, and I usually hit the lock here, kind of nice. So we have a fast attack, which means it's going to turn on immediately. Okay, that's really high. Okay, so let's just kind of do this. Okay, so if we have a slow, like, you know, a long attack, slow attack, it's kind of like a pad. Okay, so if we have a fast attack, it's like very quick. Okay, so now let's put the sustain all the way to 0 because this is the easiest way to see it. So the decay is how long it takes to get to 0. Okay, we increase that. Okay, you can hear it's longer, but you can hear that what's going to happen is eventually it goes to 0. Okay, so if we bring up the sustain, this is where when you hold down the note, now it's going to stay at this volume. And as I'm holding it down, you can see I can increase and decrease the volume. Okay, so this is what makes the sound more real, is if the attack is very, very fast, you know, maybe you want a fast sound or a slow sound. This always differs. You could even change the tension on this. So every synth is different. But okay, so we have our attack, we have our decay. So how long it takes to get to the sustain, or if it was 0, how long it takes to get to 0, okay? Once we let go of the note, that's where the release comes in. Okay, watch if we make it longer. Okay. You hear that's like the release, right? Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time here, but okay. And then the hold, what it does is once it gets to the actual attack, it stays at that max volume for however long you want. So you can see right there. So it holds and then it goes to the decay. And so that's why it's nice to have a visual. And I just showed you that nice and quick just so that we can see that when I'm talking about attack, decay. So I just turned the decay, so this is the sustain, which means that I want it to go quick. Okay, and something like this could be like used more powerfully because we're not using a sustained instrument. So watch if we clone this, and we're gonna hold down. So many of these knobs and many of these VSTs, if you hold down Control and click or double click them, they reset. So you can hear this might be a super aggressive in our song. Okay, even up higher. So I'm holding it down. So as a beat maker, to me, it's like our track already is full. So in order to fit things in, there's a couple things we're thinking about. We are thinking about the frequency spectrum, which is up high. So again, like, you have different sections in the highs, you have different sections in the mids, you have different sections in the low end. And so as a beat maker, you could be fitting them in all these different little areas, depending on how full you want the track to be. But another thing you have to think about is how long the sound is. So if the sound is super long, it's going to really, really overtake a lot of other instruments. And this track by itself, let's listen to it. Like, it's a hit as it is. I really, really like it as it is. So this one right here, because it's sustained, a bit loud, right? So it's turned down. Volume is a big thing. Not loud enough, but it's not really cutting through. So I don't like the sustain. So let's go and check it out with the, these parameters. So watch. It's a lot quicker, which means maybe we can mix it louder. It's not going to be as aggressive. And let's just see how it goes, okay? Again, I'm not promising I can make, this is all improvised, so I'm not promising I can make something catchy, but you will be able to hear, hey, yeah, that is cutting through a lot better because it's quicker. Bit loud. We'll go down lower. Go a little lower. So the lowers, you might have to go a little bit louder. See, but it's cutting through in its own space. I don't feel that it would be fighting with the track. But again, since this track is kind of complete as it is, it's a little bit hard to get something to fit that's really going to complement with what's already going on, if that makes sense. But many times, if you want to add and stack on your different instruments, that's what I'm thinking about when it comes to frequency spectrum. So this video is pretty random, but the whole concept of understanding your frequency spectrum is really going to allow you to make better beats. So what I want to recap on is like when it comes to our certain instruments, again, I'll just put this here so we can look at them. So, right, we have a kick drum. Like, yeah, we know that the kick drum plays in the low end, and the kick drum, what does it fight with? It fights with the bass line, right? I'll go down lower, even lower. I think I played it like right here. Right? So watch, if we play the kick drum, then we play the bass, right? So like, yes, they fight in the same area. That's always going to happen. It's always going to fight. But even in the low end, right? So for example, you have to remember from 20 hertz to 50 hertz, that's more than double. Okay. So watch, if we, in the FabFilter, you can open up the piano keys here. You can do that, or you can look at the frequency. So you can see, so from 20, right, to 40, well, that's double. But, right here, I'm cutting almost at 50, and then even up to 50 to 100, again, that's double. So in the low range, your frequencies are moving much slower, which means that you can actually fit a lot more kind of in that low end. And it's really important that you're listening closely in that low end, everywhere from 200 hertz and down. That's kind of like where you can get the nice, sweet bass, okay? Up here in the high end, let's just, there. So again, so from 200 to 1000, so that's 5 times as much, right? 200 to 1000. So there's a lot of things that you can fit in there. And many times when we take a band, so if we take a band and we're just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to do this, you can see because it's so wide, many times you think that it's just in this area, but really you have a lot of space within this area. So from 200 to 1000, all in this area, right? And then when you go up higher, so 5,000, 10, and then, so all I'm trying to say is there's a lot of space in your frequency spectrum. Don't be just looking at a frequency analyzer and mix off of it. It's a good reference, right? So if we listen to the full track here, you can see, it's a pretty good reference. It looks half decently balanced. But when it comes to our individual sounds, a kick drum, and you might be like, what? I'm going to cut all that out. And you can, right? You can do that if you want. But the thing is, your kick drum may struggle to stand through or, to cut through, because many times it needs that click, which is what what they call like the beater on a kick drum. Now this isn't like a typical kick drum. It's like a processed a little bit different because we as beat makers, we are using many different styles of drums. If we listen to a couple, that was probably the one I used. So kick one there. So it hits much higher. So like this would be like a type of kick drum that we are using as like maybe like a layer or maybe like a secondary kick. This could be like the main kick, and this is like a secondary. Again, this is much of a different style of kick. Right? So like this one here is very, very aggressive in the high end. Let's look at it a little closer. I will route it. So in FL Studio, you just go Control L. You can see that now it's going there. And watch if you open up an EQ on there. So this is just the kick drum, okay? So in this track, maybe this kick drum would be a bit aggressive. So what you could do is, you could maybe cut some highs, right? Maybe you cut out some in the mids. Like again, I'm not sure where, because you have to listen for where in the song, if that makes sense. But I'm just listening to it, and I just hear that maybe it could be hitting harder, right? So let's just boost up some of this low end. So let's just make our own like little kick drum here quickly. So it's at 140. And so what I'll do for that is we'll just go like half time. So this will be like 70 beats per minute. And let's do something like this. So let's just mute that. Okay, so let's listen to it without the kick drum or like without EQ. Now, maybe it sounds fine in the mix. Again, I don't know. But right now, it's like, to me, like this sounds more of like a drum like that I'd be looking for. Right? So without the EQ. But what I'm trying to say is, if you made the track, you can't just be looking at this frequency spectrum and be like, oh, okay, yeah, like that's the kind of sound I'm wanting. It's all about listening for your ears. Okay, everything for me when I'm making a track is all for all by my ears. That I selected this sound. Oops. I just got to unmute that. It's kind of like in the mids. Okay, we have our kick drum. Kick drum sounds a bit quiet compared to this piano, but in context of the whole mix, I think it stands out. Right, so it sounds pretty balanced. We have this bagpipe, which is like the main part of the song. It's kind of like in the same area as this electric piano, but it is up just like a little bit higher, and it stands out on its own. Alright, so what I'm trying to get across to you guys is when it comes to selecting our sounds, there's some sounds which we know live in certain areas of the frequency spectrum, regardless of how they look, right? If we have this kick drum, it has some high end, but at the end of the day, when the track is really going on, we are mainly just hearing the low end of that sound. Yes, we can adjust the high end to maybe help compensate to make it cut through more or less, because your kick drum, I'm telling you that without high end, sometimes it's hard to get it to cut through. So, you can apply distortion on, or, all these different types of plugins, such as like, again, distortion, compression, a transient shaper to help it kind of pop through a little bit more. But your kick drum, we mainly know it for the low end. Okay, these are like kind of like the basics. The snare, I showed you that little trick, right? You can kind of boost the fundamental right here. So let's just play that again. Right? So without it, but with it, like this is more of the snare that we know. Now that's a little bit aggressive, but I'm telling you that, they might boost it that 5-6 decibels. So it's just all about learning your sounds, learning how they work,